Hello everybody and welcome to VR Courtroom. Judge Ekron sitting to hear the crimes against Mr. Blocky. For those of you who have just joined us, Mr. Blocky is accused of snapping the neck of a small child. I think I said it was some kind of girl. I'm sure the prosecution or the defense will correct me in that one because I'm having a long day.
Yeah.
We will be proceeding with a criminal case from this point forward. I have a few small rules to explain on the procedure of court and then we shall begin. I'll begin with the procedure of court, that obviously being how we're going to make this happen. Procedure is very simple. We'll start with opening statements from the prosecution. Yes, Mr.
We have a
Bigwig?
situation. The cup is floating.
Can we start the case now?
Well, I was about to say I finished my explanation, so therefore I see no need to delay any further with my communications, as long as you're understanding of what's going on. So we'll move on to the first part of court, which is opening statements. As I mentioned earlier on, opening statements are a short and concise statement in relation to your case, and I will be allowing Mr. Mick to make his opening statement first. So, Mr. Mick, if you would take the floor and deliver your opening statement to the court.
No, I believe he murdered a policeman,
That
which
happened.
I find very hard
That
to
happened
believe.
in 1997.
believe-
Mr. Blocky, shut up.
Correct
Mr.
on
Blocky,
all
you
the
do not have the
evidence.
right to speak. Apologies, Mr. Mick.
That's all.
Okay, thank you for your opening statement, Mr. Mick. Mr. Portal, I must remind you to keep your client in check quite strongly because you may be held accountable for his actions in court, and he's already thrown various objects at me. Mr. Blocky, I'd like to remind you that you are on trial for murder right now. This is not a daycare centre, this is not a school, and this is not your friend's 9th birthday party. You're in serious trouble, so please behave and don't speak unless you were asked to speak. Now I understand why props keep getting stuck in the ceiling. Having put that slight reminder out, I'm going to lend the floor to Mr. Portal now to deliver his opening statement to the court. Mr. Portal, if you'll be kind enough to make your opening statement.
Okay. I have two things. Oh, that's not two things. One, a lot of evidence was shredded back there, so it would be hard to prove it if he did murder him. And two, he was playing Wii Sports at the time of the killing.
Okay.
I have an objection.
Thank you. You do not object in opening statements, Mr. Mick. Could you go back to being the brush, please, just for consistency, old boy? Would you mind? Thank you for your opening statement, Mr. Mick. A very interesting statement, which I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing how this goes out. So, now that we've had the opening statements of the court, that means that we can proceed on to the meat and guts of it, which are the full and frank cases. Following all of the objection rules, the prosecution, Mr. Mick, who will not be going first, will now be allowed to object to anything the defense lawyer is saying. Mr. Portal, I'm going to lend you the floor now to make your full and frank case using all of the evidence you have acquired. All you have to do is let me know which number of podium you'd like me to bring up in relation to your evidence. So, Mr. Portal, please, defend your client to the last. And don't cut him up like you did those other people. Oh, I just need my coin. Let's roll with the 1798 cartwheel penny today. Yes, a coin of 300 years old is going to decide these things. Carry on, Mr. Portal, carry on.
Okay. Podium number, I believe it was 7.
Number 7. Oh, I say, there's nothing on there.
No,
old boy.
guess not.
You had number 5 to 8, Mr. Portal.
5 to 8. Alright, it must have been 5 then.
Okay, number 5. Ah! I turned on Shredder. Delightful.
This is the shredder that was used to shred much of the evidence in the evidence room. And number 6 was the remote that was used that he used
Actual
during the
remote.
during the time of the murder.
I object.
Abstained, Mr. Mick. I want to hear where he's going with this.
If the evidence was shredded, he may or may not have committed the murder, but there would be no way to tell, and therefore it cannot be found within the prosecution's favor. And the Wiimote is the alibi that Mr. Blocky uses wasn't at the scene of the murder.
Okay, Mr. Portal, I'm going to pause you for a moment. Apologies, Mr. Mick, your objection from earlier on, if you don't mind.
My objection is, I remember that we remote in my house. I have a Wii, and he was not at home playing the Wii. I was walking around the city while I saw Blocky Ear. I saw him walking around the city too, but then a couple policemen came driving by. He hopped on the car, and the policeman stopped, and then he
Right, one moment, Mr. Mick. I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment, because it sounds like we're going into your case. We want to save that. Let's focus on your objection. Are you saying that this Wiimote is your personal property that belongs to you and nobody else whatsoever?
Yes.
So, I think the easiest way... There are two ways to determine this. One's going to be a coin toss, and the other one would be in relation to fingerprints. Now, we can do a fingerprint test on Mr. Blocky because of the technology in VRchat. Obviously, we have a lot of weird species, brushes, protogens, anime people, and SCPs. So we have developed a new fingerprinting technique that covers all of them. And Henry Stickmin as well. Mr. Lucario, I wonder if you'd be kind enough to go into the back room and please fetch me the fingerprinting device. Should be in the back room somewhere. If you can't find it, we'll do a coin toss. In the meantime, Mr. Mick, would you please give me a heads or a tails?
You want me to give my case?
Now, I want to know heads or tails, Mr. Mick. This is a coin toss.
Oh, heads.
Heads, very well. We'll wait for the fingerprinting, but once again I will not be telling you the results of this one, so perhaps it is yours, perhaps it isn't. You'll find out in Judge's summary, because I'm a prick. We will wait for the fingerprint device to come in, if it can be found. If not, we will have to do a numbers game to determine if Mr. Blocky has handled this Wiimote in any way, shape, or form. I do apologise for the delay in court, ladies and gentlemen. Occasionally, procedure does take a bit longer than the average sit down and quick masturbate in the restaurant that you're sharing with your parents right now in the bathroom. I understand we've all done it at some point, or some of us will do it in due time, but you understand how it is, I'm sure. Mr. Dirk, you seem very happy to jump around. Tell me. Or running away, even better. Mr. Henry Stickman, you had a microphone, didn't you?
Yeah, I do.
Would you like to be a witness in this case? Because I wasn't able to get one during the setup.
Well, there's two of me now, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, in that case, then, you are Mr. Blocky's employer. Come up with a story based on the stories they tell him, and we'll call you to witness questioning at the time. You can say pretty much whatever the fuck you want. You've got a bit of time, though, so don't fret too much. Also, hello, Tira, I didn't see you sneak in there. Mr. J. Dollars,
Judge?
Yes?
I mean, do you know what this whole case is about? I kind of joined in a bit late.
I was about to ask if you'd be kind enough to pop into the back room and... Oh, he's returned. Could you not find it, Mr. Lucario?
I do not see anything that involves fingerprints.
Okay, there's a very good chance that it's disappeared then. So, instead of doing the fingerprint scanner, which we cannot do because it's disappeared, I am instead going to do another coin toss. Mr. Portal, as it is your client, would you please give me a heads or a tails?
Tails, then.
Tails, right! I will reveal this information now, in both cases, as it is important. I have had the information upgraded to my beautiful protogen.
I'm surprised you couldn't find the fingerprint scanner. It's right here.
Oh, you found them? Where the fuck did that go?
Where'd you find it? Where was it?
It was just on
I didn't see anything like that back there.
metal thing in the evidence room. It's,
That was odd.
Thank you, Mr. Dollars. It's fine. We've done the coin toss, so we'll use that in reference. Now, I'm going to tell both the prosecution and the defense the result of this, as it's important. According to the information that's been uploaded to my banks, there are no fingerprints of Mr. Blocky Ear or any kind of concrete-based prints on this Wiimote. However, this Wiimote also is not the one that is owned by Mr. Mick, according to what has been uploaded to my data, which means you both lost your roles. Yours was the heads and yours was the fucking tails, so you both lost, unfortunately, but that doesn't particularly matter. We've dragged on this objection an awful long time, so I'm going to return the floor to Mr. Portal to continue his case, and thank everybody for their patience in this matter. Mr. Portal, you may continue the case as you see fit. Mr. Stickman, please
Yes,
return to
no,
the
we
gallery
can
until
let
you're called. Apologies, Mr. Portal.
I guess that I was going to add was that it was bowling, but since we can't really figure out the Wii out there, that might not be relevant.
I'll put this case in the files.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take
Sorry.
a seat, old boy. Right. So does that bring your case to a close then, Mr. Portal?
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your case then, Mr. Portal. Might I politely request, is it your first time out of law school in a court?
Hold on.
Yes.
Don't fret, Mr. Portal. I love to see the new lawyers spreading their wings and really getting their talents into being lawyers, and I vastly respect the case that you put forward. Thank you very much. Mr. Killer, Mr. Henry Stickman, might I politely request that you respawn and sit in the gallery until we call you as a witness, please? You have some time, old boy.
Yes, sir.
Thank you kindly. Now that we've heard the defence's full and frank case, I am going to lend the floor to Mr. Mick, who is possibly the most patient brush I've ever met, to present his full and frank case using all of the evidence that he has acquired, bearing in mind that the Wiimote does not belong to him, or the one it pictures does not. Mr. Mick, the floor is yours to present your case. Go right ahead, old boy.
I was walking along the city, and I saw him going by two policemen who were trying to stop him. And then the policeman tackled him, but then he had a knife, which is on, I believe, podium 2.
That is indeed a knife. Very pointy.
And he cleaned it off after he killed the policeman. And on podium 1, there's a key from the policeman. As you can see, there is a key there.
That is indeed
Now
a key.
that is the policeman's. It will say a policeman key on the top of it. You cannot see it in the cameras because it is very tiny print.
Right, Mr. Mick.
But
One moment, Mr. Mick. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. What number am I thinking of, Mr. Mick?
could you repeat that?
I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. What number am I thinking of, Mr. Mick?
Hold on, Your Honor.
Apologies. I'm thinking
What
of a
did you say?
number between 1 and 10. What number am I thinking of, Mr. Mick?
The keys are in the file.
7.
7. Thank you, Mr. Mick. You may return to presenting your case.
Is that right?
You'll find out in Judge's summary. You don't need to know this one just now.
Now, on podium 3, there is the policeman's hat. Oh, badge, I'm sorry. As you can see, that is the Raleigh Police Department, which is from one of the policemen he did. One was a sheriff. Now, on podium 4 is the policeman's hat. Now, I did notice a badge on there. I did not
This case
read
is
it,
really
but
one
I
of our
believe
worst.
that is where the police department badge goes. So I accuse him of murdering a policeman.
Your objection, Mr. Portal?
How can we verify that all of these police-related items belong to those specific police officers?
Mr. Mick, can you prove that these objects, ignoring the key as we've already had a roll on that one and that information is confidential for the moment, can you elaborate on how these objects belong to the particular police officers who are allegedly have been murdered?
Yes, I can. May I go get them?
Yes, sir.
Is he wearing
May I go
gloves?
get them?
I
You'd
will
let him
allow
look at
you
the
to
items.
retrieve them. Mr. Lucario, would you please join Mr. Mick to make sure there's no foul play in the back room, old boy? We will have another very short recess whilst the props are collected. It will probably come down to another coin toss unless he has a very convincing argument. Once again, I vastly appreciate the patience of the audience. Mr. Blocky, I did not give you permission to get off the table and play guitar. You may shove it up your ass for all I care right now.
Wait, where is it? Don't throw it at him.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Blocky, this is the fourth item I think you've thrown at me now, and if I were a human, I'd probably be quite cross, but I'm a robot and don't have the program to be cross. You fucking bastard! And therefore, I politely request that you stop throwing things at me.
So.
Sheesh. This is one of our worst court cases. This keeps getting worse and worse
This is
every
a great
day.
court case. Why have we brought the knife out? Are we doing fingerprint testing on the knife,
Weird.
Mr. Mick? Is that why the knife has been brought
Mhm.
out? Right, bring them up here then, I tell you what, and let's have the fingerprint scanner, and we'll scan every single object with the fingerprints that have been put into the databanks. Now, this one's already been done, so I will not be doing the key, as I already know the answer to that one. But I will not be telling the prosecution. Could you pass me the fingerprint scanner, please, Mr. Lucario? Lovely! So, this fingerprint scanner is a wonder of modern technology, to the point where it literally has the ability, if you just face palm it against here, to indicate if the fingerprints are on. So I just need to program it to do the police officer's badge. Blip, 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 blip. Right, so now the device has the fingerprints of the police officers in, and we shall now scan the hat and the badge to see if their fingerprints were on these objects. So if I click
What
the
about
first
the
one,
knife? Did you
the
scan
knife,
the
will
knife?
the knife will be done for something else because he's the one that's used the knife, so we need to test his fingerprints. So, blip. Now we'll just wait for the scan to come in. New scanning. There we go, waiting for the scan to come in. Okay, so the fingerprints of one of the police officers were found on the LPD badge. We shall now test the hat. Blip. Right, we'll just set the device to scan. And the fingerprints of no police officers were found on the hat, so the hat does not belong to either of the police officers who are alleged to have died. However, the badge does. Now I just need to quickly reprogram
Well,
the
like I
device.
mentioned, this hat, sir.
Yes.
It was the sheriff's, not the policeman's.
I believe they fall under the same remit in this case, but we'll do the knife now. So now we're testing the knife for the fingerprint of Mr. Blocky himself, as he is the one who has allegedly used the knife. So, once again, we'll be doing a very intelligent test. I do love technology, you just have to hit things.
Very professional.
And there's the scan testing, and negative. So, what we have determined from this fingerprint evidence is that the badge found in the possession of Mr. Blocky definitely belonged to a police officer. The hat did not belong to one of the murdered police officers, but allegedly the sheriff. And the knife has no kind of fingerprints or anything in relation to the accused, therefore is most likely not a murder weapon used by him. The key, as I've already mentioned, was decided with a roll, which will be revealed in judge's sentencing summary at the end. So, thank you for your objection, Mr. Portal, a very interesting one. Mr. Mick, I'm going to return the floor to you to carry on with your case if you have anything else to add.
That's all, sir, Your Honor.
Okay, if you will be kind enough to please take a seat.
I had to get a little taller so I could see you.
That's fine, as long as you're a brush, that's fine. Consistency is lovely. Right! Well, in that case, then, that does bring both of our cases to a close, and a very interesting case presented by both sides. On the defence, we have the he was not in the area at all defence, and that's about it with that one. And on the other side, we have the he was murdered by 2 police officers, and he has had some property belonging to the police officers, but not the alleged murder weapon, which is a very interesting trend, so we'll be following this one very closely. But now we're going to move on to the next segment of court. Next segment of court is quite simple. The next segment of court is the fun one, is witness questioning. We have 2 witnesses in this case. We have the accused, Mr. Blocky himself, who would do well to listen to what his lawyer says and basically follow that line. And we have Mr. Killer, who was a person in the street. Mr. Brian GT, we do have a case ongoing. I would vastly appreciate if you fucking died in a fire or sat down and behaved. I don't mind either way. God damn it. Mr. Blocky, would I politely request that you actually sit on that seat to stop people teleporting in?
My camera.
You don't need it. You can have it next time.
My camera.
Lovely. Please stay there, Mr. Blocky. That should keep the annoying people out. So, the first witness that we're going to be calling to the stand is Mr. Blocky. I will be swearing you in, Mr. Blocky, with something called the Pledge of Honesty. It's very simple. You just have to repeat the phrases after me. Are you ready, Mr. Blocky?
Yep.
I, Blocky Ear 8DFC,
It appears that
promise
God's
to
will
tell
is
the
true.
truth,
Promise to tell
the whole truth,
The whole truth.
and nothing but the truth, lest it turns out that I am
What's the truth?
a weird piece of art
A weird piece of art.
that was made by a Japanese artist
That was made by a Japanese artist.
and then turned into one of the most popular
It entered the most popular
SCP things ever.
CP things ever.
So help me God. That was my hammer. So help me God.
Butternutter. What is he doing?
I don't know, I've got him blocked. Very well, close enough. Right, Mr. Blocky, would you please be kind enough to give us your testimony as to what happened on the night of the alleged murder? Mr. Portal, do be seated. Right, one moment, sorry, I have to find this annoying piece of
I was
shit.
just trying to get rid of the objects in the podium.
I
Wrong,
accept
anything
that,
else.
but I'm afraid I'm about to lose my temper, and as he's blocked, he won't hear it. So just before we do that, let me just do this. Oh, look, my gavel. Somebody found it. Right, where is he? Where is the little shit? I don't know where he is, but he's gone in the back room. Let's keep him there. Right, Mr. Blocky, your testimony, if you don't mind. What happened on the night?
I was playing the Wii.
You were at home playing the Wii. Is that the entirety of your witness testimony?
No, then I went for a walk, then I saw a police badge, I pick it up, bring it home. That's it.
I see. Very, very interesting. Right, is that the full intent of your witness testimony then, Mr. Blocky?
Yep.
Fantastic. Mr. Mick, would you like to question the witness on his statement?
I'm okay.
Very well. Mr. Portal, would you like to question the witness on his statement?
I guess not.
Very well. In that case, then, Mr. Blocky, your statement has gone uncontested, which is quite rare, but very acceptable. I appear to... My aunt is sitting next to me. Glorious. Right. Does the prosecution, I'm asking, wish to call the other witness to the stand?
Playing the Wii U.
Yes.
Very well. Mr. Blocky, would you please take a seat next to your lawyer? I'm going to make a mistake and open the floodgates. Mr. Killer, would you please come and sit on the accused stand as the other witness to this case? It is your time to shine. Lovely. Right. Take a
Oh,
seat.
wait. You mean on the other side right
No, no, no.
Someone
You're,
else
take a
stand
seat. No, 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 Mr. Killer. A seat on the accused stand, please. Basically, the chair in front of me.
Oh.
Lovely! Right, to refresh the memory of people involved, Mr. Killer was a witness to what went on in the street at the time. Before Mr. Killer can give his testimony to the court, of course, we need to do the Pledge of Honesty. Mr. Killer, all you have to do is repeat after me. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah.
I, with a Killer, 7726 EA. I, with a Killer, 7726 EA.
I, with a killer 7726 EA,
Promise to tell the truth,
promise to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth,
and nothing but the truth,
lest I end up being
lest I end up being
the protagonist in a video game
the protagonist in the video game
where the whole entertainment factor
Video game.
with the whole entertainment factor
is being murdered a lot.
is being murdered a lot.
Also, I'm a twat, so help me God.
Also, I have a twat, so thank me God.
Close enough, thank you. Right, Mr. Killer, as a witness to the alleged crime, would you please give us your witness testimony as you saw it? No interruptions during testimony.
Well, I did see Blocky come through the hallway or not the hallway, but the sidewalk when I was coming through the other side of the sidewalk while there were a couple cars running by. He went through the alleyway though, so I was a bit curious as to why he would take a shortcut. I did see him there, and then after that I was waiting for the post office because I had to mail a delivery for my not my wife, but my sister's birthday. It was my sister's birthday at the time, so I had to give her a gift card. And then when I went back, I saw him again. That's all. That's kind of all the information that I know so far. I just know that he was seen at the time.
Okay, so
On the
after
streetway.
that time. Okay, thank you, Mr. Killer. Mr. Mick, would you like to question the witness?
Yes.
Mr. Mick, please go ahead with your questioning of the witness, politely if you'd be so kind as to return to being a brush. I'm quite enjoying seeing a brush lawyer who isn't shit. Go ahead, Mr. Mick. It's rare.
Very well.
Not wrong.
You claim that you have not
Alright.
seen any murder from the accused, correct?
I haven't seen any weapons on him. No.
But did you fully search him, or did you search him at all?
He was at a distance. I couldn't tell what he would really have.
Do you see any police officers in the vicinity before you lost sight of him?
I did hear cop alarms nearby, if that counts.
Well, the cop alarms might have been the... Actually, I don't know. Very well, questioning over.
Thank you, Mr. Mick. Mr. Porter, would you like to cross-examine the witness testimony or not?
I think so.
Go ahead.
Do you think that it would be possible for you to just have seen him during his walk?
I mean, to be honest, like I looked at him, and he seemed a bit suspicious and all, but I didn't think he'd be a kind of guy that would murder someone.
I could yawn.
But then when I looked up in the cases, I had to join in.
Probably.
And, like, tell the truth and all that.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Portal. Mr. Mick, I'd like to politely remind you that talking during the witness questioning is quite rude. Now, I accept you like to have a good conversation, but don't be an arsehole, old boy. That's that fucking guy's job, not yours. Right. And with that, we bring a close to witness questioning. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Killer. You may return to the gallery. Mr. Sprett, a pleasure to see you in the courtroom as ever. Please get rid of the annoying fucking kids. Right. Now that we have had the witness testimony and cases, we move on to one of the last parts of court, which is amendments. Amendments are nice and simple. I will simply ask if you wish to make any changes to your case as you have presented it in light of new evidence, which there has been some new evidence that has thrown your cases into question somewhat, so that's fine. No, of course, is an incredibly acceptable answer, so therefore I shall ask, Mr. Mick, would you like to make any changes to your case as presented?
I see my case as perfectly true. I feel that I have no need to change the case whatsoever.
Thank you, then. That will be no amendments. Mr. Portal, would you like to make any amendments to your case as you see fit?
Yes. As well as playing Wii, he also went badge on the sidewalk and grabbed it. Don't know if that's stealing or not, but...
Okay, so the amendment is that he found the badge on his walk. Yes?
Yes.
Very well, the court will accept this amendment. It will be brought up in judge's questioning. Summary. Any other amendments to make, Mr. Portal, or are we all sorted?
That seems good.
Lovely! Well, in that case, then we can move on to the last bit that the lawyers required entirely, which are closing statements. I'd like to politely request where the fuck the defendant actually went. I assume he's disconnected. Is that correct?
Oh.
we will carry on as if he is there. You're going to have to just pretend, which means I'm going to have to supply something in. Thank you for bringing me this badge, you annoying child. Right, I'm going to lend the floor to Mr. Mick to make his closing statement to the court. Short speech about why you think your case is correct, and you may reference evidence. No objections during closing statements, please, Mr. Portal. Mr. Mick, the floor, for the last time, is yours.
Very well. Thank you very much. I think that the accused, I don't remember his name, Blocky, was... I'm 90% sure he was guilty in the murder, because I think that they have added this new evidence of him finding the badge on the walk as a cover-up to make him seem innocent, like he was going to return the badge. But I have decided that I do not believe that, so I think that he is lying to protect the innocent, to protect the accused.
Thank you for your closing statement, Mr. Mick. Might I just ask as well, I asked the defences but not you, is this your first case out of law school, Mr. Mick, or are you an experienced lawyer?
This is my first case.
First case. Well, you've both done spiffingly well for a first case. I'm genuinely pleased with both of you. But before I go into all full plaudits, I'm going to lend the floor to Mr. Portal to fuck everything up by giving his closing statement. Mr. Portal, if you'd be kind enough to give your closing statement to the court, I'm sure we'd all vastly appreciate it so we can get away from this fuck... What?
Yes. While the testimonies make my defendant look suspicious, it's ultimately not even close to enough evidence to convict of murder. His fingerprints were not found on the knife, and the badge doesn't necessarily mean that that he took it from the police officer, and also due to the possible spoliation of evidence, many of the evidence against my client might have been destroyed. Thank you.
Okay then, and thank you for your closing statement there, Mr. Portal. Delightful. Well, what an interesting case we've had presented to ourselves. Two lawyers fresh out of law school facing off against each other. The most fun I'm sure they've had, at least in the past 20 minutes, until that nonce appeared. And I have been genuinely intrigued by both cases. Rather short and with some rather interesting tweaks in between, but genuinely very enjoyable, as well as the witnesses taking part. Thank you kindly, Mr. Killer. That's vastly appreciated. You were an asset. So, without further ado, we now move on to my favourite bit of court, which is, of course, Judge's Summary. Yeah, there are no objections during Judge's Summary because this is how I have summed the case up. And we will begin with the defence's case. So the first piece of evidence that was presented by the defence... I don't remember what the first piece was because it's fucking disappeared. What was it, old boy? It wasn't the Wiimote, was it? It was something else.
It was the shredder.
The shredder, of course. The shredder was used to shred a lot of evidence. Now, the defense is claiming here that evidence that could have been used to either prove the innocence of his client or the guilt of his client was shredded somehow, we don't know where, allegedly in the courtroom, meaning that it would be hard for the prosecution to prove, using the evidence available, that his client was guilty of the crime. Interesting piece of evidence, more of a technicality than a piece of evidence, but with the line that the defense was going along, all in all possibility. Perhaps better as a sort of footnote that this had happened rather than a full-on piece of evidence, but that doesn't particularly matter. The next piece of evidence, which had also disappeared, was the Wiimote, which the defense alleged that his client was using in the comfort of his own home during the murder. However, via the extensive testing that we did determine that the Wiimote did not have the fingerprint / concrete residue / anything like shit from the accused on there, meaning that he had not handled this in at least a time period of 24 hours in the meantime, meaning that he wasn't necessarily playing Wii. The prosecution made an interesting point that this Wiimote was allegedly his own personal property that he recognised from home, but this was also proven to be false information, as it was not his Wiimote, unfortunately. So a slight confusion there from the prosecution, but nothing that can't be overlooked in the heat and adrenaline rush of a new case. But a very short and concise case here from Mr. Portal. We did have an amendment made after witness testimony that the badge that was found, which has been brought out, was actually found whilst on his walk, as this did have the concrete residue of the accused on it. So, a short and concise but rather interesting case as presented by the defence. My client wasn't there, he was doing something else. There was a bit of an alibi there, but not necessarily anything. I mean, if I was the defence, I would have said that perhaps he was playing a wee gaming session with his friends and brought up the calendar as a piece of evidence and pointed out a specific date indicating that this had been planned in advance and would have been there forever. Or perhaps he was going to the library to return his books rather than going for a random walk, although I accept that was the witness testimony that brought it up, not the lawyer. But just all these small little things that the lawyer can do just to see how things go. But that's absolutely fine, because now we'll move on to the prosecution's case. And I'm aware most of their evidence is floating around, but focuses very heavily, in fact it's almost completely pointless to have this up here because none of the evidence is in the back room, but focuses very heavily on the murder itself. And here, for the first time, we had the two victims, two police officers who were stabbed, which is interesting because if I recall correctly, when I played out the original charges, he was alleged to have killed a small girl by snapping her neck. Now, this was never brought up by the prosecution or the defence, and instead we have a charge of stabbing, which is quite interesting. Now, the accused did have the badge of one of the police officers on them. This was an amendment made after witness testimony by the defence, but interestingly, the prosecution never objected to this amendment, so it was accepted by the court that this was an object that was found. The prosecution did allege that on the hat of the sheriff, there were fingerprints belonging to the accused, which there were not. But more importantly, the knife used in the murder, which was never contested by the defence, so it is confirmed to be the knife used in the murder, did not have the fingerprints of the accused on it, which is a thank you for that. A very interesting point, because obviously if you've used a weapon, you're going to have fingerprints or concrete residue or your own personal shit on it in one way or another, and this was not present on. The witness testimony from Mr. Killer confirmed that the accused was out and about at the time that the police personal alarms were going off, but seemed to be very calm and walking down an alley to take a shortcut. It is of course possible that this may have been to escape the police, but if I'd stabbed a couple of policemen, and I'm a robot, I don't have the programming for it, but I'd stabbed a couple of policemen, I probably wouldn't be casually strolling down the road, personally. Now, one of the pieces of evidence we haven't addressed is the key. As I said, all the evidence is out here, so there's nothing to go on the screen, so I'm sure I'll superimpose that in the video. One of the pieces of evidence brought up was the key that was found on the accused. Now, we didn't do a fingerprint track here because we accepted that the accused had this key on him. Allegedly on the key were the words, "property of the police department," Lolly Police Department. However, upon closer inspection, there was no such thing written on there. In fact, all that was written on there was Viva Keys. Viva Keys being the lock company that made the lock mechanism on the defendant's door. What that means is when you guessed 7, Mr. Mick, the number was actually 3, and therefore you fell into a loss. 3 would have been a critical, 4 would have been an excellent, 5 would have been a win. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 unfortunately were losses. If you'd gone for 10, then it probably would have been your key, and you'd be found guilty right now. But that means that what the prosecution said in relation to the keys was not necessarily correct, and it was not a key belonging to the police officer. Although I accept, unfortunately, occasionally it can be very difficult to prove a piece of evidence belongs to the police officer in court fairly, which is why I tend to do random rolls like this, and I understand that that can throw people off because it's random. It's rather unlucky that it didn't go your way, Mr. Mick, but to be fair, a lot of the random evidence we've had really didn't go your way in this court, and you definitely shouldn't feel too bad about the case you put forward, because I did rather enjoy it. However, having said that, I do believe that closes up our judge's summary, so I can move on to the next bit. As I said, it was an interesting case that I have rather enjoyed listening to both the defence and the prosecution, and besides that one little tyrant running around being a knob-end, I vastly appreciate the effort put in by the gallery to not be a bunch of knob-ends. Thank you kindly, gallery, it is vastly appreciated in the random room. However, at the end of the day, bearing in mind that a lot of evidence presented by the prosecution has been disproven using the court systems, and although important evidence on the defence in relation to the Wiimote and his original story has also been disproven, I do not think that there is enough critical, important evidence that can really put the blame for these 2 murders on the accused, who has left to go do SCP-related things. We can't stop the Foundation. I think one of the main downfalls here was that the prosecution, though I accept this is probably more of an excitement because there's a court case going on, didn't actually follow up with the original charge, which was the murder of a small child by snapping neck, or something along those lines. But we'll ignore that for the moment in time. However, based on the evidence that has been presented to the case, I, in good faith and mind, cannot find the accused guilty of the crime of murder, and must put the two murders of these serving police officers, ACBC, whatever it is at the moment, into the category of unsolved murders, and release the accused, who's already fucked off, as not guilty. Although you both did really well, like for your first time, especially in a serious court case, Suckett. You both did really well, and you should be pleased. But, because so much of your evidence was just end of that out rule because